Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Speak and Grow Rich podcast. We are traveling all the way to Rwanda to visit Rebecca Hansen today. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey Amanda, how are you?
Good. Well, you are a sales messenger, genius, consultant, strategist, where you've actually helped your client go from no to go back to his prospect and enroll $500,000 from one conversation that you led him through to help him with his sales message. We need to know how to do that. How many of you guys listening here have had no's where you've been rejected, where people didn't pick up what you were putting down? And now you want to learn some sales strategies. So we have the one and only messenger of sales guru-ness with us to share her secrets with us. So tell us, Rebecca, a little bit, how did you go from number one, Denmark, all the way to Rwanda? And then we'll get into the sales strategy.
Yes, thank you so much. And sorry about my dogs in the background. They're gonna get a little bit loud at times. This story of how I went from Denmark to Rwanda is quite long. So I'm gonna sum it up quite quickly. I knew that I wanted to leave Denmark since I think forever. Denmark has just never really been for me. I thought I was gonna go to Asia for a very long time. I studied business and Mandarin and everything.
Oh, wow.
And then I realized at one point that the thing that attracted me to China that I wanted to go to was the whole boom that I experienced back in the 90s. But that boom it's not that it's passed, but it's definitely reduced. You know, there are way
Right.
more incremental growth than it was exponential at the time. So I thought to myself, where can I get something like that now? And then immediately I just thought, well, Africa. You're gonna have to go to Africa to experience that type of growth. And I thought I was gonna go to Ghana for a really long time, but then my aunt, she booked a trip to Uganda to see the gorillas that I just piggybacked. I was just like, I'm going with you. This is gonna have to happen. And I mean, I'm telling you, Amanda, there's so many things in this story which is just about steps being laid out in front of me. I just closed my eyes and I started walking, and it ended up with me moving to run. I quit my job. I had a good, stable, nice paying job in the bank. I went home, quit my job, packed my bags, came here without really much of a plan. I was gonna volunteer for a couple of months and then think, oh, I'm gonna get a job at some point. And everything, literally everything played out in a way I can't even describe. It was so magical. And I think it really proves that when you follow your intuition, which is something I
Mhm.
really, really did during those days, everything was about gut feeling. I felt like I had like a rope tied around my belly that's just pulling me forward, and all I had to do is just move, you know? So that's what I did.
Amazing.
And yeah, that was a very short version of how did I come to how did I end
What?
up in Rwanda? That's almost 4 years ago now.
How inspiring. Okay, and then tell us, I love everything about this. I want to go down that. We'll have to go even deeper on another podcast, but for today's
Mhm.
podcast, tell us how you helped your client go from no to a 500K deal
So the
from one
thing is,
conversation with you.
yeah, most entrepreneurs are so much deep into their stuff that they have a lot of assumptions about how people can visualize what the process of the product or the result is going to look like, that they don't really help their clients see that. They also have a tendency to focus a lot on the process or the product itself than the actual results that they can get. So what I helped him do was to build a story around the current product that they had in place and why that was not beneficial. And then a different story that helped the client visualize their client, not my client, but their client visualize what is what is it going to look and feel like once
Mhm.
this solution is in place. And then kind of juxtapose those two. So which kind of future is it that you want to have? Do you want this future or do you want that future? You know? And then
Yes.
making it emotional. So many people think sales has to be logical, but logic has very little to do with our decision-making process. The first thing you
Mhm.
got to do is evoke those emotions.
Right.
Emotions also make people lean in much more because it's something that we can kind of feel, you know? Whereas
Mhm.
logic, very often you would sit down and you sit back and you think about it a little bit, but emotion, once the story comes out and you relate to it. It's something that pulls people in. So we work just on very specific scenarios on how do you describe those two, and then how do you, like, in the end, once you have those scenarios set up, that person is going to look almost like an idiot if he says no, right? If he can
Right.
agree, if the client, which in this case was a he, if he can agree that the visualized scenario that the product could create is a better, way better scenario than the one that they're headed to if they're going to stay without that solution, he's going to feel like an idiot saying no, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, so good. So how would you help someone? Let's say they are stuck, they're getting no's, they're hearing crickets. What is the first step you would teach them to nail their message? And how can they access their emotion in their communication and delivery?
Yeah. So one of the first things I usually ask people to do is to describe to me what is it that they do. And very often people describe, as I mentioned, the process. So let's take coaches, for example, because this is so typical coaches. Let's say that you're a mindset coach and you sell yourself as a mindset coach. But most people who need a mindset shift is not going to sit at home and think, I need a mindset coach, right? So what you would do instead is you would call out all the situations, or at least some of the key situations where someone would need a mindset shift in order to have a better situation. So that could be, do you feel like you have no control over your life and that everyone else is at fault? You know? um, do you feel like everybody's constantly overstepping your boundaries? And also depends on what type of mindset coach are you? Is it in relation to business? Is it in relation to health? Is it in relation to relationships, right? So do you feel like people are overstepping your boundaries? Do you feel like you're working too much? Do you feel like you can't ever find a person who really appreciates you? Do you feel so? Instead of saying, oh, I'm a mindset coach who maybe helps with these things, you would instead describe those situations. And then how does that situation make you feel? What does it really feel like when you're sitting at home and then you're still wondering, why is it that nobody really appreciates you for the person that you are, that you're constantly giving and giving and giving, and you're never nobody ever reciprocates, like you're always taken for granted. So once you start describing those situations is when you make it really emotional, right? And then you can start saying, did you know I can help you with that? And then you can bring in a client story. I had a client who was exactly like that, and we worked together for this and that long time, and now today she's setting boundaries, people are respecting her way more, you know, these kind of things. So describing scenarios and using those stories is what can help evoke the emotion. And I would suggest if you're sitting at home, you're not making any sales, you're probably not very good at describing that transition. What is it going from when you onboard them as a client, and what can they expect their future to look like, and really help them feel, what is it gonna feel like when you're sitting at home and people are just appreciating you for being you? You know, they're gonna show up for your birthday or whatever it is. You know, just also just taking inventory of what are your clients usually going through when they come to you. What are their problems? Another thing could also be that maybe you're just talking to the wrong people. So there's different types of way that you can call your person out. If you are in general talking to, let's say, unemployed people, you're not very likely to onboard them, because people who are not employed are much more concerned with focusing their finances on maintaining life until they get new stable income. So the chances of someone who's unemployed to hire a coach is low, right? It's not non-existent, but it's going to be a whole lot harder for you than someone who's either employed or in a business with a stable income. So if you're saying stuff like that makes it sound like you're talking to someone who's unemployed, oh, you can't get any jobs, or, you know, do you have that type of misery going on in your life? Then that could be a different reason why you're not making sales.
Right. Exactly. Solve rich people problems, not poor people problems.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes. I love it. So really future pace them and paint the picture in their mind and the feeling where it's almost like they're sitting here and they can choose two different futures. That's beautiful.
Exactly.
And going deep
And
into the emotion, not just say, oh, I'm a mindset coach, but going layers deep. That's
yes,
great.
and use words that they would use. So
Mhm.
I like to use the example when I was younger, especially when I was like in my teens, my early 20s, I struggled a lot with victimhood mentality. But I did not know that I struggled with victimhood mentality until I was no longer suffering from it, until I was able to reflect on it and think, oh, that was what my problem was. So if a coach had told me I can help you with that victimhood mentality, I would be like, what victimhood mentality? You
Right.
know, that's not what I have. What instead they could, if they had said instead, do you feel out of control of your future or your current situation? Do you feel like people are constantly overstepping? Do you feel like, you don't have control over your own life and therefore you're just constantly stuck in misery?
Mhm.
Every single situation ends up being negative, this kind of language. So you're not calling them out and saying, you're such a victim, You're
Right.
saying, are this how you feel? I can help you. You have way more control than you think you do. So
Mhm.
that's another thing. Do you use the language that your people are actually using? And the thing is, especially in the coaching space, we very often we are already transformed, right? We have already achieved the transformation that we're selling. And the thing is, when we go through transformation, our language changes. We start
Right.
referring to things differently. Like the case that I just mentioned, we would talk way more about using words like victimhood mentality that I would have never used before. So
Mhm.
if I come out now and I start talking about things in a way that I would talk about it post transformation, then I'm losing all the people that are my ideal audience who have not yet been through that transformation.
Mhm.
So figuring out what kind of language is it that they actually are using before pre-transformation, and how can I tap into that? How can I use those words? So that's
So
another
good.
thing. Yeah.
Now, do you recommend that those listening, practical, would you have them journal all this out or speak it out to someone else? Or what's the best way for them to access that vocabulary and language from their past?
It's really funny because I spoke to an instructor recently, and I mentioned this to her. I said that there's a problem in how you're communicating, and she said, "Oh my God, I just burnt all my old journals," because that was her old self, and she was like, I'm not like seeing myself as that person anymore." So she literally burnt them,
Oh,
but that would have been such a great source of
yes.
information. Another thing is simply just listening.
Mm,
Especially early on when you're onboarding your clients, what are they telling you? What are they saying? If you can go back, maybe find some old Zoom calls or notes that you're
mhm.
having where you can tap into that kind of language that they use, or just be in spaces where they are. So
Right.
all of this can kind of feed into it. I would say anything that has to do with um, it's in especially, I know that I'm talking a lot about the coaching space because there's just so many issues with with messaging
Yeah.
and coaching. A lot of
True.
people like to use very fluffy language. So they would say, oh,
Mhm.
mindset, or elevate your spirit, or bring this in here, and they would use increase your frequency, and all of these things are great when you appreciate them, but you
Right.
very rarely appreciate them until you've experienced the power of them.
Right.
So if no one has ever increased their frequency, or improved their energy levels, or achieved any of these things, gained authority, these coaches, they love using all this type of language.
Right.
But if you've never experienced it, you can't really visualize or feel. Like, it doesn't speak to the emotion because they don't know what it feels like. It doesn't speak to their visualization because you can't see
Mhm.
what does elevated authority look like, right?
Yeah.
So if you
No
can't
idea.
No idea. If you can't, I have like a guiding rule. If you can't draw it on a piece of paper so that someone would understand, and that
Yes.
even better, it should be several people that will see it and understand the same thing, right? So if I'm saying elevated authority, I have no idea how to do that. If I say paper and pen, everyone will see. Everyone
Mhm.
immediately knows it has to do with paper and pen. So the more clear you are in that sense,
Mhm.
the better language it is for people to really understand what you're talking about. So just kind of maybe just take inventory again about how are you talking about your things, and
Mhm.
just think about, will people really understand this if they haven't already had the experience?
Right. So helpful. This is going to help a lot of you when you're delivering your talks and speaking from stage to use your vocabulary to paint the picture in their mind. I love it. Well, tell us a little bit more about how else can we sell? How can we be better at sales and enroll more and
So
hear less no's?
I think many people are so focused on the sales process that they forget everything else around. There
Mhm.
is so much valuable, there's so much value in just being a likable person who helps people.
Mhm.
So if you just put yourself out there, if you have good tips that could help someone, just give it to them. Don't think about, oh, I need to charge you like $5,000 to give you this tip, you know?
Right.
Just if there's little, nuggets and things that you can help people achieve through just being you. And also
Mhm.
just, show up and being a person, share your personal stories.
Mhm.
We are way more likely to buy from someone if we feel like we can relate to them, or we feel like there's some sort of an emotional connection, or if we feel a bond that's built just by getting to know that person. So if it's just even just coming out on social media and sharing some of your personal stories can be really
Mhm.
powerful. Um,
So true.
yeah, exactly.
Just like
So
hearing your
there's
story of your intuition, like this cord pulling you forward, and it's so magnetic. So tell your stories, give tips, give value, show up as a resource before you're a vendor, and
Mhm.
be a friendly person. It's so easy. Sales is love. Sales is really a gift. So that's really how you do it. And then get clear on your message, add emotion, paint the picture so they visualize and see it and feel it and give value.
Yes.
That's so juicy. Well, how can we stay connected with you and how can we learn more from you?
So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is I am Rebecca Hansen, spelled Rebecca Hansen. So I will be sharing. I'm going to be having some free webinars coming up.
Wonderful.
I'm building a course soon as well that I will be where I just take all of the main things that people do wrong and what they should do instead when it comes to
Wonderful.
offer structures, pricing strategies, and sales messaging. So yeah, tune in and follow along.
Thank you. Well, give her a hand, give her a hand. You guys comment below, follow her. I hope you got a lot of value from today. I think if you just sit down and journal these out and think through it, it will see you will, and then share your stories, share yourself, and be generous. I think you'll see a huge shift. And hopefully you'll be like Rebecca's client from your last no to a $500,000 contract. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Rebecca, thank you for your time. Thank you for showing up all the way from Rwanda. I want to come visit you sometime. I want to see the gorillas.
Please,
Yeah.
please come. Yes.
We got to have retreats there. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I would love it.
All right, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, Rebecca. Bye.